To establish a new scientific discipline, scholars must build its linguistic infrastructure. Abstract thought becomes verifiable science only when it possesses a specialized conceptual language. Every major shift in how humanity maps the physical world has required this exact linguistic invention. This diagram maps subatomic particle interactions. Before physicists developed this specific notation, they lacked the linguistic mechanism to track these quantum behaviors with any consistency. When early computer scientists began building digital architecture, they invented algorithmic terminology, precise words for realities that previously did not exist. Without a specialized vocabulary, complex observations remain ambiguous. A researcher cannot teach, test, or validate a concept they cannot precisely name. Conversational language lacks the conceptual resolution required for advanced academic inquiry. It is too broad to handle the extreme precision that rigorous research demands. Linguistic innovation acts as the mechanical engine driving intellectual advancement. This requirement applies directly to Afrisophy, the African science of wisdom. It is a comprehensive, emerging academic discipline built on African civilizational perspectives. The scope of this discipline integrates ethics, empirical science, governance, cosmology, and human flourishing into a single, unified framework. To formalize this body of knowledge into a rigorous science, scholars are building a new academic vocabulary from the ground up. Mapping integrated African concepts using existing Western philosophical terminology forces data into mismatched categories, distorting their actual meaning. The solution is the Afrisophy Lexicon. This is a deliberate intellectual infrastructure designed specifically to name and organize these realities. This lexicon provides the institutional framework needed to organize and transmit African knowledge as an integrated civilizational system. This transition establishes Africa as a producer of original scholarly frameworks rather than a consumer of global concepts. Historically, African realities have been studied through conceptual frameworks developed entirely outside the continent. Colonial educational systems enforced European languages as the exclusive vehicles of intellectual achievement, separating populations from their own conceptual traditions. This process displaced indigenous frameworks, forcing scholars to interpret their own civilization through foreign lenses. Afrisophy identifies this condition as borrow mind, the intellectual dependence on foreign assumptions while neglecting one's own civilizational wisdom. Borrow mind forces integrated African civilizational data into rigid, incompatible theoretical boxes. Because the grid does not match the data, critical aspects of African epistemology fall entirely outside the lines and remain academically invisible. This reliance reduces African knowledge to the status of regional anthropology, rather than recognizing it as an independent science of wisdom. Intellectual independence requires the confidence to name, categorize, and define one's own realities. Resolving this crisis involves reclaiming the capacity to construct reality through language. This is word creation, the deliberate formation of new concepts expanding human understanding. Word creation produces original conceptual tools to illuminate realities that remained invisible within imported linguistic frameworks. It allows scholars to isolate and study specific phenomena that previously had no name in global academic discourse. The objective of this process is concept sovereignty, the ability to define reality based on one's own historical and cultural experience. Concept sovereignty enables scholars to engage with the intellectual traditions of other civilizations as equal partners rather than dependents. Creating a new vocabulary expands the boundaries of what a civilization can academically investigate. To achieve this precision, the Afrisophy Lexicon is built as a modular system rather than an alphabetical dictionary. It operates as a meaning network, where concepts gain their definition through their relationships to one another. The foundation of this network relies on root families, standardized prefixes that ground all subsequent terminology. The Civilee root family standardizes civilization as a living organism. It branches to generate terms like civila soul, defining a civilization's enduring moral essence, and civila knowledge, the body of wisdom preserved across generations. This modular structure allows for the infinite expansion of academic terminology while maintaining strict civilizational context. In this system, single words function as compressed philosophical formulas. The term wisdom architecture demonstrates this conceptual compression. The wisdom root represents the integration of knowledge, ethical character, and moral responsibility. The architecture suffix identifies the structural framework required to organize and sustain that wisdom. Fusing into a single term, it defines Afrisophy itself, the structural framework used to systematically organize African knowledge. The lexicon provides the academic precision necessary to communicate complex civilizational ideas efficiently. This structural design serves one ultimate target: accurately mapping the African worldview. Central to this is Afri-reality, the African understanding of existence. Afri-reality operates as an integrated system, where visible and invisible dimensions, humanity, nature, and ancestors, function as a single unified order. Conventional academic disciplines isolate science from spirituality or humanity from nature. This fragmentation fails to map the interconnectedness inherent in African thought. The lexicon's meaning network mirrors the interconnected nature of Afri-reality. The relationships between the words reflect the relationships between the concepts they describe. The architecture of the Afrisophy language is a direct reflection of the metaphysical architecture it was built to describe. Within modern universities, this lexicon moves from theory to practical application. It establishes a know language, the specialized vocabulary required to advance in academic discipline. Establishing a standardized know language allows universities to develop consistent curricula across different regions and languages. This precise terminology equips researchers to conduct peer reviews, publish academic papers, and formulate policy using unified metrics. This formalized system replaces the ambiguity of relying on unstandardized colloquial terms. Without the formalization of this know language, African civilizational wisdom remains an anthropological curiosity rather than a teachable science. Developing an indigenous academic lexicon does not isolate African scholarship from the global scientific community. Its purpose is wisdom sovereignty, the capacity to engage globally from a position of intellectual independence. Wisdom sovereignty allows African scholars to critically evaluate external knowledge through their own historical and conceptual lenses. This infrastructure empowers African scholars to contribute original disciplines to humanity's shared intellectual heritage. This process replaces the intellectual dependency of borrow mind with the self-directed methodology of concept sovereignty. Ultimately, the Afrisophy Lexicon provides the robust intellectual infrastructure built to carry African civilization confidently into the future.